He's at 51 from the field, 39 from the three, and 88 from the line. So his shooting splits have been phenomenal. You get efficiency, consistency, and then you get this level of effectiveness where he impacts the game on the other end of the floor. So I absolutely love the fit, and as a result, I take them much more seriously than I did pre-trade. Because I thought, before the trade, I'm thinking like, well, depending on how the seeding, works out, if they can, avoid, or if they can get into that 4 spot playing home in the first round, yeah, you know what? There's a good chance they win a first round series, and then give whoever they get in the second round fits. Like, I think they could play Boston in a really tough series if it was the 1-4 matchup in the second round, but they would lose that series, like I feel everybody would in the Eastern Conference. Boston is just at a totally different bar. Is so high for them right now, and because they can beat you a number of ways, they can get a shootout, they can get a slow down game, they can guard you for 5 minutes, they can get back in the game if they have to. They're just different. They're a different level than everybody else. But I think this, to me, makes the Knicks more valuable, like buying into win a series and then battle the hell out of somebody else in the second round. And if hey, Boston comes into that short-handed, maybe you pull off some sort of a surprise. But I didn't really think that necessarily about the Knicks before. I saw the Knicks as potentially being a team that could lose in the first round to somebody. And maybe that still would happen if they got a Cleveland or they got somebody like that.
Indiana,
Miami,
who we're going to talk about in a second.
Indiana, right. So it's not out of the question. They could win the first round series, but I buy much more.
I think this is a nasty, serious team. Like, nasty. And if they get Robinson back, and I do think they need Robinson back to hit the kind of ceiling you're talking about, although Hardenstein has been unbelievable, and I am, and he's injured now too, and they just don't miss a beat somehow. If they get him back 90% of what he was to start the season when he was one of the best defensive big men in the league. Look, if they're in the 4 spot, I'll pick them to win that first round series, most likely, all things equal, everybody healthy, whoever it is. Can't pick them to beat Boston. But I agree with you, like, they're 0-3 against Boston this year. One of the losses opening night was close, the other two not as much. They played Boston really well last year. They were, I think, 3-1 or 4-0 against Boston last year. I think they would give them a tough, they're just a pain in the ass to play. And if they got the third somehow, they'd be underdogs against Milwaukee or Philly. I totally think they could win that series. I'm not sure I'd pick them, like I said, but that's a winnable series for them. Even if they don't make one more, I think they will try to do that. And by the way, Brunson should have started the All-Star game. Didn't see what the vote was. I don't know who voted who and where. I know Lillard got that starting spot. I think Lillard, I'm leaning to putting him on my reserve list this year. I think he's done enough lately. But Brunson has been unbelievable for them. And I think the second best guard in the East behind Halliburton this season.
Totally agree. We know what it is. I mean, it's obviously taken out of the hands of just analytics, and just when guys like us will just look at it like these are our starters, just simply based on merit, individual and team success. And I tend to put a lot of weight into team success to reward guys in that situation, because I know that in some cases that might be their shot for that player to make an all-star team, because their team is having such a great first half of the season. You just don't know how things can play out in the future, and where a guy like that second best player on a team can get in. So I tend to lean and give the nod for the most part to guys that have the team success. Can you imagine the New York Knicks without Jalen Brunson? I mean, so no, I completely agree with you. Just based on merit, it should have been Brunson.
Did you make your All-Star reserve lists yet?
I do. I thought the East was pretty easy for me.
Let's do East for now. We all agree Brunson should have started. So that means I assume we have Halliburton, Brunson, Tatum, Giannis, Embiid, which is 4 out of the 5 that actually are starting. I'm interested to hear your 7 reserves, 2 guards, 3 front court players, and 2 wild cards, whatever you want. Tim Legler's All-Star reserves. Go.
I got Jaylen Brown. I got Tyrese Maxey. I got Donovan Mitchell. I got Julius Randle. I got Bam Adebayo. And I got Paolo Banchero.
And Brunson, obviously.
Yeah, Brunson is the other guy we already said. So, and then I have another list of like close. Like there was 5 guys that were like guys debating. It was Porzingis, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, DeMar DeRozan, and Jared Allen. Those were the other guys I had like strong consideration for, but I ended up with Brunson, Brown, Maxey, Mitchell, Bam, Banchero, and Randall. How did that differ from yours?
So my starters would have been Halliburton, Brunson, Tatum, Giannis, Embiid. My reserves currently are guard Maxey, guard Mitchell, front court Jaylen Brown, front court Bam Adebayo, front court Julius Randle. So we're on par so far. First wild card currently in pencil, and I will make my final picks next week. Damian Lillard. Second wild card, I have no goddamn idea. I was leaning toward Banchero, but he's been kind of a little bit up and down lately. And my list of other guys is very different than yours. I have Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, Derek White, who I thought you were going to put on when you said this may be their only chance, reward winning. I thought he was going to be on it. Jared Allen I have. And then Trae Young, who's now missed some games. You're just out on Trae Young, despite like 28 and 11. You're out.
Out on that, and I'm gonna contradict myself in a minute when we talk about the West, but I actually know the line. I'll call it below the 10 seed. And I know Trae, they're in their 10th right now, but they're 8 games under 500, and that's why I said I want to lean toward the guys that are having more impact on success and being in a competitive environment. And 8 games under 500, man, that's not going to cut it for me no matter what your numbers are. And Trae Young is not a guy that's going to really lay it on the line on the other end of the floor. He's going to play one end of the floor all the time. And that's a problem for me when you start getting into these extra spots. I want guys that actually compete both ends and have had more of an impact on actually winning games. In Orlando, I know they've come back to the pack now. Their start was incredible. I kept questioning it every week. Like, look at their roster. How is this possible? I kept saying it. Truth of the matter is, look, here we are 44 games in, and they're still 2 games over 500, man. And Banchero, I think, is going to be a perennial all-star. And I think he deserves it based on their record. 5 games better than the Atlanta Hawks. So the gaudy numbers don't mean as much to me in that situation.
And he carried them for about a 2-week period with no Franz Wagner, no Markelle Fultz, no Gary Harris for most of it, no Joe Ingles. It was like there was a lot of Chumo Okiki going on, and they stayed afloat most of the end with Banchero doing everything on offense. We'll save the West for later.
So we basically completely agreed, except for the last spot. And I said that he
was my first. Let's hold off on the West and talk about a couple of East teams that made trades. The Heat just acquired Terry Rozier. Last night, another loss for the Heat, got absolutely blown out at home by the Celtics, which was somewhat less disturbing to me than getting blown out at home by the remains of the Memphis Grizzlies the night before. The Heat have lost 5 games in a row. They are 5 and 9 in their last 13 games. They have fallen to 22nd in offense. Their point differential for the season is minus 34. They are 28th in offense in those last 14 games, with only Charlotte and Portland, which are almost not real NBA teams at this point, below them in the offensive rankings. And if you look at their shot selection, I don't like to be like it's got to be all threes or rim guy, but they have reached a critical point of they've crossed the critical threshold of like your shot selection is just too mathematically disadvantageous. They are number 1 in mid-range shots for the season, 15th in threes, 28th in shots at the rim, and that's got even more skewed towards the mid-range in these last 14 games. And you just watch them on offense, even these first couple games of the year, and they're just stuck in the mud. Like they're a team that's always made hay, even with bad spacing and guys who don't shoot threes, with cuts and passes and handoffs and flare screens and all the fancy nerdy stuff done at a fast pace. And there are a lot of possessions right now where that machine just like stops after 1 or 2 of those things. And they ain't good enough offensively, at least with Jimmy Butler playing like this. And we should probably have a Jimmy Butler conversation because he's just like I don't know what's going on with him, but he was injured in his last 3 games. He did not look like Jimmy Butler. They miss Hawkins a lot because he activates all that stuff. You know, I like the Rozier trade. I already talked about that this week. I think it's a good trade for them. I listen to the Bills podcast every NBA episode. He talks about Miami as the alpha in the East. I am all about hashtag E culture. I respect the hell out of it. I want to face him in a playoff series. But when do we stop talking about Miami as the alpha and start talking about, like, in the play-in tournament right now? I'm starting to get, like, I need to keep giving him, like, a few games coming up for me to have my faith a little too easy. Where are you on the Heat in there, Rozier?
You might not see that out of I think it's guys that perform by the regular season, and he's never been a guy that, for me, has been even, I don't know, where I'd rank him in terms of guys in the league that have entertained me to watch, particularly in the regular season. He's very entertaining to watch in the postseason because the way he digs in and the way he goes about possession by possession, he's got that killer mentality. He doesn't do that in the regular season. So he's clearly in that mindset right now. I agree with you on several things you said. One, I also like the trade. He gave up practically nothing to get him.
You smart motherfucker.
Look, as much as I love Kyle Lowry and what he's meant as a player, and he's gotten every single ounce out of his body and ability as an NBA player, you know, he's at that stage. You get Terry Rozier, it's a massive upgrade. And Terry Rozier was a guy that made his bones in this league when he first started. We started noticing him because of his defense. And his ability to pressure the ball and get his top leg over a screen and like get in the guy. He loved that end of the floor. His offense picked up. His defense isn't as impactful as it was, but I think in this environment, when he's playing meaningful games and left the situation he was in Charlotte, and now he's going to be playing meaningful games the second half of the year and then into the playoffs, I think you're going to see that defensive side of him again. At that level, he's absolutely
Found you, bitch.
Right now, that kind of stand around when they don't have it, get it, and then they want to put it down and call for another screen. Like, that's what they look like, except for, like, Duncan Robinson, who's going to run around a lot and he's going to catch and shoot it when he gets it. Everybody else, they kind of want to get into a rhythm off the dribble, and sometimes when you do that 2 or 3 times on the same possession with different guys, you're going to end up with a late clock contested mid-range shot, which is what you're talking about. And they take a lot of mid-range contested shots, which is the lowest percentage shot in basketball. So here's the good news. We just gave a lot of things that concern us about the Miami Heat. Good news is this: is there anybody else who wants to figure this out through their culture? Right? He's the guy to figure it out. And what you've just done is give him another weapon at his disposal to figure out how to use and the best way to squeeze the most juice out of this offense. I have a lot of faith in him. I still think he's the best coach in the Eastern Conference, if not the entire NBA. If I could just take any group of 12 players that you handed me, and you picked them, names out of a hat, any 12, and said, okay, don't win a game or a series or a season, I'm picking Eric Spoelstra to coach that group, no matter who it is. So I think if there's any good news, it's that. They got him. They got some guys that are going to start paying a lot more attention to the details of this after the All-Star break as you get closer to the postseason. And I think now they've got more punch. Rozier gives them more punch. Like, he is a guy that can get hot, get you a 15-point quarter. So ultimately, I'm going to reserve judgment on the Heat because I do like the trade. I agree. Their offense can be really unwatchable at times. And, you know, last night it showed you a little bit right now how far they are away from the top of the Eastern Conference.
And they're 7-14. People pick on the Knicks for their record against above 500 teams. The Heat are 7-14. And look, everything you said, like Spo is Spo. I think he's the best coach in the NBA. His team has proven it in the playoffs over and over again. I know they did it last year. I just coming out of the play-in, if that's where they end up. And Indiana just beats up their team. Indiana's in 6th. Cleveland's in 5th. They're going to get healthy. Now, they've been great without being healthy. And the Knicks we talked about. Getting out of 7th is not going to be a cakewalk. So I know they did it last year. Getting out of the play-in and then having to go potentially through all 3 of Philly, Milwaukee, and Boston, if that's how it breaks down. That's just a tall order, man. I know they did one of them last year Philly in the second round, but like that's no fun.
No, I agree. Listen, yeah, I agree. And right now, it's tough because I think we're all trying to figure out what the second round and then the conference finals are going to look like beyond Boston, because I think they're that much better than everybody else in the Eastern Conference right now. And I don't know how you close that gap, but for the Heat, they're that team that, and I didn't talk about the Heat one time, I don't think, the first month of the season. They didn't come up. And then they started rolling a little bit, right? They started playing. And you're like, well, man, forgot about the Heat. They're gonna have something to say about all of this when it's all said and done. And I have a feeling we're still going to be saying that when we get to the playoffs. Like, they're going to do something. Or they're going to look a certain way going in, where now you can't dismiss their chances because of how hard they're going to play in those spots. Butler, we know what he can do to elevate his game at that time of the year. And then they've got Spo. So, look, like I said, I'm reserving judgment on them. And I might not talk about them a whole lot between now and, late March, early April. Let's revisit it when we get there and see where they're at and see if we've changed our minds about any damage they might do or the threat they might be to any of the top teams.
Well, and the benefit that they and the Orlando Magic have is that there's a huge gap between 8 and 9 in the play-in tournament bracket right now, which means you have a pretty good chance that your worst-case scenario is 2 games to win 1 to get into the playoffs and not on the bad side of the play-in. But, you mentioned, on Rozier, I think this will look better as they go. I think the way he can shoot threes, I like the idea of, another guy who could run 2-man game with Butler to get rid of that. Put your point guard on Rozier, that's something you can go to. And already you've seen, if they're running things in the middle with Bam or Butler and you have on one way and on the other, you guys get into diagonals instead of just one. You can have one that much anymore. I think we'll be healthy for them. They gotta get out of the mud, and maybe they don't care. Maybe it's just like worst case scenario we're 8. From there like we did last year. Maybe they don't care. But I like the trade.
Hey, and I'm gonna say one more thing on this. From an X's and O's standpoint, one of the things I like a lot about Rozier, I love Tyler Hero's ability to play ball screen offense, but not as the initial guy. I love him when maybe there's some action run on one side of the floor, you get the defense to shift and react a little bit, and now it gets swung to Hero on the other side, and he runs ball screen, or he gets into something there. So I think Terry Rozier being on the floor with him, and look, they've only got 2 games under their belt. Anytime you bring in a guy that's pretty high volume shot taker and scorer, and just incorporate him into your offense, it just takes time for that to sort out for everybody, not just Rozier. Everybody's impacted by adding a guy like that to the mix, including Eric Spoelstra. So you've got to give them time to find some sort of a flow to all that, but ultimately, just having more punch, scoring punch, is really good for them.
You don't know this, Tim, but you just made me very happy because I took a lot of flack the other day from Tyler Hero fans. And I'm a Tyler Hero fan. Tyler Hero's really good. When I said, I hope this trade pushes him to become 15% more, 10% more, whatever percentage I use, less than 20, like Klay Thompson, and 15% or 10% less like I want to dance with the ball and be the guy, which he's very good at. And a lot of people pushed back to me and said, well, that's not Tyler Hero's skill set. He's a great pick-and-roll ball. And he's a good pick-and-roll ball. His mid-range jumper is fine. People acted like, and I wrote this column on Tyler Hero 2 years ago. I said the same thing. He passes up too many catch-and-shoot threes. He's an unbelievable shooter. When he gets a look that's decent on a catch-and-shoot three, he should take it because he's that good of a shooter. People acted like I said, I want Tyler Hero to become Kyle Korver. I didn't say that. I said I want him to become 10 to 15% more like Klay Thompson, which means shoot contested threes. Even if they're semi-contested, you're that good of a shooter. And just like you said, and be, set some screens and flare out, run some split actions. And like you said, when you run pick and roll, some of them, not all of them, maybe not even half of them, some of them should come after someone else now that you have another ball handler has already compromised the defense and given you a head start. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't say Tyler Hero stinks. I didn't say he's not an all-star caliber player or whatever. I just said 10 to 15%, and I think I stand by that. I think that like the best version of him for the Heat is just a little bit more like that and a little bit more trigger happy from three. I want him to take more threes.
And Zach, I'm going to finish this off with this because this is such a great conversation. One of the things those people need to understand is that when a team comes up with a game plan schematically, defensively to defend pick and roll, okay, they're very good typically at being able to defend the initial one. So let's say that's Rozier on the right side of the floor, and we know how we're going to play it. We're going to hedge it. We're going to blitz it. We're going to go under, like whatever it may be. There's 8 different ways to play it. Whatever it is they're going to do, they're going to do it. When the ball gets swung, and so when that first action is run, the guy guarding Tyler Hero most likely is going to kind of drop off to the lane because the ball's on that side of the floor. The big guy, the second big or forward on that side is kind of off to the lane. When that ball gets swung around to Hero and he's the secondary action, you're much more likely to make a mistake in your communication with the second ball screen that takes place in that set with 2 different players. And that's why that could really benefit him, as opposed to he's coming getting into him, and they know exactly how they're going to play this first ball screen. There's a very good chance they might blitz it or might somehow force him to give it off or swing it. That's not going to happen necessarily as much with a second action, which he can initiate. And that's why I really like this spot with him. I think he and Rozier, they need to spend as much time together as possible, man, getting to know each other and bonding, because they can really make each other's lives, much better. And for Rozier, he's got to thrive in this. Like, his numbers won't be as good, but averaging, 16 on a team that's playing for something means a hell of a lot more than 23 for a team that's going to win 20 games.
Last thing on them, one thing we've already seen in just the first 2 games is this is big for Miami. Just the ability to keep 2 of Rozier, Hero, Butler, and Bam on the floor at all times could be really big for their offense, because when they have just one of Butler and Bam on this time, and when they rest both of them, it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? In the first 2 games, they've had Rozier and Bam have kind of been a duo that plays a lot together, and then when those guys are off, Hero and Butler are on the floor. I like that. Let's talk about the Pacers, who've only had 1 game with Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton. They are 1-3 with Siakam. I'm throwing that record in the toilet. I don't care if they beat the Sixers like that. 26 minutes. Halliburton and Siakam shared the floor in that game. Their only game together is somehow lost. So